Hello and welcome everyone to this video. What we are going to look at in this video is inequalities. I'm going to deal with a very important concept of inequalities, which is related to the kind of questions that appears on any of the aptitude entrance exams. Okay, so let's have a look at inequalities and try to understand what do we mean by this. Now, before we move on to inequalities, let's try to understand, deal with an equation and see how that really works. So if you look at an equation, let's say 3x plus 6 divided by 2x plus 5, and you try to solve this equation, you typically try to cross multiply 2x plus 5 with 2 and try to solve this further, right? So you get 3x plus 6 is equals to 2 times of 2x plus 5. Further, if you solve this, you are going to get this. And at the end, you are going to get x equals to minus 4. Now, what does this x equals to minus 4 means? It means that if you put x equals to minus 4 back into that equation, your left hand side will turn out to be equal to the right hand side, which in this particular case is 2. So let's put x equals to minus 4 just for our understanding. If you put x equals to minus 4 back into that equation, what you're going to get on the left hand side is minus 6 by minus 3, which is nothing but 2. So your equation, so your answer, which was x equals to minus 4, is actually correct. Now let's change this to inequality and try to understand what happens in case of an inequation. I've tried to keep things very similar. So I've written 3x plus 6 divided by 2x plus 5 greater than 2. Let's try to solve this inequality. Now, if you apply the same logic that you have applied to equation to inequality, let's see what really happens. Let's cross multiply 2x plus 5 and we are going to get 3x plus 6 greater than 2 times of 2x plus 5. If you solve this further, it is going to boil down to x less than minus 4. Now, what does this x less than minus 4 means? That if you put any value of x less than minus 4 into the given inequality, it must satisfy if x minus 4 is your solution. X less than minus 4 is your solution. Let's choose a value in the range x less than minus 4 and put it back into this inequality and see if that really satisfies. So let me take the value x equals to minus 4, which is of course lesser than minus 4. So I'm taking x equals to minus 5, which is definitely lesser than minus 4. And let's put it back into the inequality. 3 times of minus 5 plus 6 divided by 2 times of minus 5 plus 5. And let's see if that turns out to be greater than 2 or not. It will turn out to be minus 9 by minus 5 greater than 2. And we will realize that on the left hand side, you will get 1.8, which is not greater than 2. And hence it is an incorrect solution that you are getting. Let's choose one more value. If you look at your original value x less than minus 4, we had neglected all the values greater than minus 4. Let's now choose a value of x which is greater than minus 4 and see if that is satisfying or not. So if you choose the value of x as minus 3 and put it back into that inequality, you will realize it is 3 times of minus 3 plus 6 divided by 2 times of minus 3 plus 5. Is it turning out to be greater than 2 or not? You will realize minus 3 by minus 1, which is 3, is greater than 2. And hence x equals to minus 3 is a correct solution, which was neglected in this solution that we had done. That means we had terribly gone wrong with x less than minus 4 as our solution. Now, in order to correct this mistake, we need to learn the concept of multiplication and what happens when you take the equations and multiply the equation by a number, and what happens when you take an inequality and multiply the inequality by another number. Let's observe that. So if you look at multiplication, how that happens in case of an equation, let's take an equation x plus x by x plus 2 equals to 4. Now, typically, we have been taught that we can cross multiply x plus 2 with a 4. Now, there is nothing called as cross multiplication that exists under mathematics. What exists is that you multiply the entire equation by a particular number. Let's see what does that mean. So in order to take this x plus 2 on the other side, we are in effect multiplying this entire equation by x plus 2. If you multiply the entire equation by x plus 2, what happens? This x plus 2 gets cancelled with this x plus 2 on the left hand side, and with 4 it gets multiplied. So what in effect you get is x equals to 4 times of x plus 2. And this is absolutely correct. Now let's try to observe what happens when you multiply the entire inequality by a certain number. For that, I have not taken variables, but I have taken constant terms first, and then we are going to move on to variables. So 10 greater than 7, we all know this. Now let's multiply 10 with a number 2. So what we get is 20 greater than 14, which is absolutely correct. Now let's take another the same inequality and multiply it by another number. So 10 greater than 7 and multiply this inequality by 0.5. I've tried to experiment with the numbers. Now I'm experimenting with the numbers between 0 to 1. And if you multiply this inequality by 0.5, you are going to get 5 greater than 3.5, which is absolutely correct. So there is no problem as long as you multiply the inequality by a positive number. Let's experiment what happens when you multiply an inequality by a negative number. So 10 greater than 7, and let's multiply this inequality by a minus 2. So what are you going to get? On the left hand side, you are going to get minus 20. On the right hand side, you are going to get minus 14. And which one is greater? Minus 14 is greater than minus 20. So what are we observing? We have reversed the sign of inequality. So this is the heart of the entire concept, that when you multiply the inequality by a negative number, you got to reverse the sign of inequality. Otherwise, you will go wrong with it. Right? Let's take an example where we are dealing with variables and trying to see what really happens. So if you deal with the variables, and let's say we take an inequality x divided by x plus 2 greater than 4, and we try to solve this inequality. Now, if you try to solve this inequality, your first thought would be to multiply 4 with an x minus 2, sorry, x plus 2. But for that, we need to understand whether x plus 2 is a positive number or a negative number. Because what are you going to do? You are going to multiply the entire inequality by x plus 2. Is x plus 2 a positive number or is x plus 2 a negative number? That ideally depends upon the values of x. So if you take any value of x greater than minus 2, you will realize x plus 2 will be a positive number. When you take any value of x less than minus 2, you will realize x plus 2 will turn out to be a negative number. So now we will have to solve this inequality into two different parts, x greater than minus 2 and x less than minus 2. If you take the value of x greater than minus 2, that means you are presuming that x plus 2 is a positive number. Now, when you multiply the inequality by a positive number, your inequality sign does not change. It stays the same. So that is why you will observe that this sign present over here is going to remain the same. X greater than 4 times of x plus 2. Now let's solve it further. You are going to get 3x less than minus 8 and x less than minus 8 by 3. Now, this implies what? It is throwing up a solution which is x less than minus 8 by 3. What is minus 8 by 3? Minus 2.66. But remember, my first step was valid only when x was greater than minus 2. It is giving me a value which is x less than minus 2. That means this is an inconsistent solution. Let me help you out in another way in which you can figure out whether your solutions are consistent or inconsistent. You can simply draw a number line and you can try to understand, let's say if you have a 0 over here, you have a minus 2 over here. And the first statement was what? X greater than minus 2. Where on the number line x is greater than minus 2? Over here, in this entire range. What is this solution presenting you? X less than minus 8.33, which is what? Minus 2.66. X less than minus 2.66. Where will be minus 2.66? Let's say over here you have a minus 3. Over here you will have minus 8 by 3. X less than minus 8 by 3 is a value present over here. Is there any common solution between these two range? No. And hence, this is called as an inconsistent solution, that you are not going to get any solutions from this. Now let's proceed further with x less than minus 2. And if you proceed further from x less than minus 2, you will realize a very, very important change that we have done over here. We have reversed the sign of inequality. Why? Because when x is less than minus 2, x plus 2 will turn out to be a negative value. And when you are multiplying the entire inequality by a negative value, you got to reverse the sign of inequality. And that is why you realize that the sign of inequality has been reversed over here. If you take it further, you are going to realize that x is greater than minus 8 by 3. Now, this turns out to be a consistent solution, reason being that this is consistent with the original range taken over here. A part of it is consistent with the range taken over here. Let's try to run the same experiment that we had done over here. We will try to look at it over here as well. We are looking at x less than minus 2. So let's say over here you have a minus 2. Over here you have a 0. And where is x less than minus 2? It is over here. This entire range or a region is x less than minus 2. Now what is this throwing up? X greater than minus 8 by 3. Minus 8 by 3 is where? Suppose this is minus 3. Where is minus 8 by 3? Minus 8 by 3 is somewhere over here. Now it is saying x must be greater than minus 8 by 3. Greater than minus 8 by 3 means what? Over here. That means in this region, my primary condition is satisfied, and the solution that it is throwing is also present in the same region, and hence my solution will turn out to be x greater than minus 8 by 3 and less than minus 2. This is how you take care of inequalities. Majority of the time what we have observed is they are trying to test you on your ability to understand inequalities, that you can't simply deal with inequalities the way you deal with equations. Let's now go to our last part of it, with which is effectively the first part we started our session with, which is trying to solve this particular inequality, which is 3x plus 6 divided by 2x plus 5 greater than 2. Now, in order to solve this inequality, we need to multiply the inequality by 2x plus 5. But we first need to observe whether 2x plus 5 is a positive number or a negative number. So if you take your 2x plus 5 and put it equals to 0, you are going to realize x is equals to minus 5 by 2, which is effectively nothing but minus 2.5. That means if you take the value of x greater than minus 2.5, your denominator will be positive. And when you take the value of x less than minus 2.5, your denominator will be negative. So let me take the value of x greater than 2.5, minus 2.5. If you take the value of x greater than minus 2.5, your denominator is positive, and hence now I can multiply the entire inequality by 2x plus 5 without having to change the sign of inequality. So it is going to be 2 times of 2x plus 5. Let's solve this further, and what are we going to get? We are going to get 3x plus 6 greater than 4x plus 10, and you are going to get a minus 4, which is greater than x. So you are going to get x less than minus 4. Now, if you look at your first primary condition, which was x greater than minus 2.5, it is giving you a solution x less than minus 4. If you plot it on the number line, what happens? X is greater than minus 2.5. Suppose you have a 0 over here, you have a minus 2.5 over here, greater than minus 2.5 is over here. And if you look at the solution that it is giving you, which is x less than minus 4, is a value over here, you will realize that there is no common region, and hence there is no solution that exists in the region x less than minus 2, x greater than minus 2.5. So there is no value of x greater than minus 2.5 which will satisfy this inequality. But we are yet not done, because we are yet to test the inequality in the region x less than minus 2.5. If I test the inequality in the region x less than minus 2.5, what my rule says, that the number with which I want to multiply the entire inequality, if x is less than minus 2.5, it is going to turn negative. Now, if I'm multiplying the entire inequality by a negative value, then I should reverse the sign of inequality. So what am I going to take? I'm going to write 3x plus 6. Reversing the sign of inequality, I'm going to get this 2 times of 2x plus 5. And we will now try to solve this inequality. We'll say 3x plus 6 is less than 4x plus 10. And what we are going to get is a minus 4 over here and x. So we are getting x greater than minus 4. Now let's see if this solution is consistent with the original range that we had taken for this particular solution. So x is less than minus 2.5. X is less than minus 2.5. Minus 2.5 is, let's say, over here. Less than minus 2.5 is over here. Suppose my 0 was over here. Now it is saying x greater than minus 4. Where is minus 4? Let's say minus 4 is on this side. Of course, it has to be on this side. And I'm saying x should be greater than minus 4. That means I'm looking at this region, right? So what is the common solution that I'm getting over here? I'm getting between minus 4 to minus 2.5 is the range of values. So x must be greater than minus 4 and less than minus 2.5 is the value that we are trying to look at. Now, please understand, if you take any value between minus 4 to minus 2.5 and put it back into this inequality present over here, this inequality will get satisfied. So what we have effectively done is we have checked the value of x from minus infinity to plus infinity, and we have now narrowed down to a region which is between minus 4 to minus 2.5, saying that any value taken in between these two values will satisfy the given inequality. This is what I wanted to communicate on this video that how do you deal with inequalities and how do you solve those inequalities. I hope you enjoyed the video and keep following us. Thank you.